Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me today, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for part 3 of the Carolina Football Series podcast we talked about, if you haven't seen the first 2, make sure you go watch them. The first one, we talked about the returning seniors that have decided to come back due to the NCAA rule this year where you can come back. And we talked about the defense in the the offense in the last one. So make sure if you haven't seen those, after you watch this video, of course, go check out those previous videos as well. And AJ, we're here to talk about the defense today. We're going to do a little look back first and then kind of look ahead, similar to what we did in the offensive video. So let's just dive right into it, man. Carolina's finished number 8. They had the number 8 overall defense in the ACC this season, 29.4 points per game they allowed. So for me, AJ, looking back, it was, and we kind of talked about this a little bit off camera. We've talked about it multiple times, but for me, it was kind of a tale of 2 seasons in one. You kind of had everything that happened before the Wake Forest game, and then you saw kind of an influx of youth come in after that, during that game and after that game. And then kind of the second part of that season is the Wake Forest game on, finishing with the Orange Bowl. So I think overall, early in the year, the defense really struggled. They had some games where they just didn't look good. I mean, they had multiple games. Virginia Tech had one of them, even NC State game, where they just let up a ton of points that, against teams that overall probably weren't that great when it comes to where Carolina is in their stated mission is trying to go. But once we saw that Wake Forest game where Carolina let up a ton of yards, ton of points, we saw some of those youth guys come in, Tony Grimes, some of those guys across the defensive line in particular. After that game, I think we saw a little bit more of an improved defense, and we saw a little bit more of a defense that, with that youth, started to play a little bit better. And as those guys got more confidence, I think the defense as a whole got more confident and got better. But AJ, what are your overall thoughts? And would you agree with me in that assessment of kind of the tale of 2 seasons in terms of what we saw from this defense as a whole?
Well, I think to get a fair gauge of the direction the defense is going, you go back to the middle of the third quarter against Wake. The final 29 plays that Wake ran that game were against more the guys that we saw the rest of the way, and a lot of whom are going to be back next season. That's when Jaquarius Conley was inserted at nickel, and Morrison was full-time back at safety, and Tony Grimes was inserted at cornerback, and he's been entrenched there ever since. And at that moment, Wake was leading 45-24. It didn't look good for Carolina. Wake was pulling away. And the Demon Deacons were just Sam Hartman was chucking the ball all over the field.
I was tossing that rock, yeah.
They made that switch. And the next 5 possessions, Wake gained 29 yards.
Yeah, showed.
And the defense got stops. The offense got it going. Carolina ended up winning the game 59-53. That defense did pretty well against Notre Dame, all things considered. Western Carolina was what it was. They were very good against Miami for the most part, certainly when it counted. The game was put away before Miami really started getting some chunks. And I think they did a very representative job against Texas A&M. Remember, A&M had 15 3-and-outs for the season going into that game, never more than 2 in a game, which was a stat I botched, by the way, in our 3, because we got an incorrect stat up in the press box that some of us ended up botching. But Carolina had 5 3-and-outs against A&M. A team that's really good at converting on third down, and Carolina stopped them a lot on third down. They got the field. We saw a group that flew sideline to sideline more after the youth movement was made. And I think you're only going to see more of that. You get to see none of these kids, even the early enrollees, never had a spring. They had to train on their own through Zoom, video lectures, or workout lectures through Zoom and stuff. So now they're going to get a full off season. Tony Grimes should have been in high school. Now he's going to get a full off season. Conley's going to get a full off season. Those linemen, Pinder and Murphy. Hester, this was just his 3rd year of football. He's a redshirt freshman, but I kind of lump him in with those other kids. He played 150, 160 snaps. Miles Murphy played around 200 snaps. Conley was in the 300 range. Grimes played 317. Well, yeah. I mean, these kids end up getting a lot of snaps. And Conley and Grimes started the last 4 games. So I love what they have coming back. I love those young kids and what they could be, because I think you're going to see them take sizable jumps next season. And then you have the gravitas and experience of Gimmel, who needs to be more consistent.
He does, yeah.
He needs to be a little bit better. I think he can be. I love the way he played against A&M. It was like it was his defense.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the guy. And he just looked like he was even more in command out there. You're going to see that all through the offseason. He's going to be that guy. He's going to be that voice. He's going to set the standard for the offseason preparation and conditioning for these kids for spring practice and how they approach things when they start fall camp in August. And I really think that, I mean, when we talk to him, Jacob, don't you get the sense that this guy's going to be a defensive coordinator someday?
Oh, no way around it, man. He just talks X's and O's all day.
Yeah,
sometimes
so
I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, I know. Because the football jargon changes constantly.
Oh, it changes like crazy, yeah.
The only people that would know the jargon that I knew back in high school, Mac would know it because he's older than me. But I mean, Bateman and Long, Bateman might know some of it. I don't know, but I know that guys like Sparky Woods would know it.
Oh yeah, he definitely.
But Gibble probably would because he's a junkie. He studies his stuff so much.
Yeah.
And the secondary is going to be, Connor Michael was kind of inconsistent, but he played better late. He was really good against A&M. That guy, that five-star kid that Clemson brought in, is the dude that we started to see more of. They're going to get Storm Duck back. They're going to have Michael, Grimes, and Duck rotating at corner.
That's a lot of talent.
Maybe they move Michael in and play a little bit of nickel. I don't know what they're going to do. Move Conley back to. I mean, they have a lot of options in the secondary, and if the front is consistent, and remember Vahasik's back. Bahasik was pretty solid.
Yeah.
He's got to be more consistent as well. Tamari Fox, again, has to be more consistent. He's back. So they have a chance to be a lot better up front and more spread out with the reps. There were times, I think, when Tamari Fox and Bahasik played too many snaps.
Yeah.
But that they trended away from that late in the season after they made that youth movement. We got to see Eugene Asante.
He looked good.
And I think Carolina fans should – don't worry. Chaz was phenomenal, but Asante is going to be really good too. 10 tackles. He graded at 77 for the season. Didn't play a ton of snaps. He was in for like 156, 160 snaps. Still graded out at 77.
Yeah.
That wasn't just the A&M game. So I think they're in good shape. I'm really more excited about seeing what the defense looks like than any other part of the game because I love to see evolution. I love to see players and position groups and units and teams get better. I'm a huge fan of the process. Well, their process shifted into high gear in the third quarter against Wake Forest. And some of the growing pains they had to go through are going to pay off big time moving forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a defense that, what do you consider what Jay Bateman's done in the past as well? Now he's kind of got that experience coming back. He's got guys coming back. He's not having to replace a ton of people. So I think it's a lot of reasons if you're a Carolina fan to be really optimistic about what this defense can do next season.
And there's going to be competition, Jacob.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
only a couple of guys own their jobs, but there's still going to be a lot of competition. They're going to go into a second unit in most of those spots and be in pretty good shape. They're still going to have to find some depth at linebacker. The hybrid spot, especially if Tamon comes back, is going to be in really good shape. If it's not, we'll see what KBJ can do. We'll see what kind of progress Desmond Evans makes. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get stronger, maybe a little more ferocious, which will happen with a full off season, I would think. But there's going to be competition there too. It's not just the starters are good. I think that they got 18, 19, maybe 22 guys on the defensive side of the ball they feel pretty good about. And the mission is to get even more. And I think they're trending in that direction.
Is there any – because you look at the defense and there's not really a lot of guys you have to replace. I mean, Chaz Surratt being obviously the main guy, but like you mentioned, the way Eugene Asante played against Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl kind of gives you a little bit of optimism. Well, maybe he can kind of step and fill those shoes like pretty seamlessly. Obviously, Chaz is, 91 tackles, led the team this year, also had 6 sacks, was second on the team behind Tamon Fox. So, it's a lot to replace, obviously, but I think Eugene Asante gives you some optimism there. And, of course, with Tamon Fox announcing that he's going to return for his 6th season of eligibility due to that NCAA rule that they implemented this year because of COVID, that's also huge news for this program as well. But if there is a concern for you, what is it? Because I look at this defense and I say, everybody's kind of coming back. And if Carolina's defense can kind of play like they did towards the end of the season and just keep taking those necessary strides to get better every week going into next year, there's no reason to believe that this defense shouldn't be, even better than they were in some of the games to end out the season.
I would say the defensive front, they got to be better stopping the run. And we're talking about the positive trajectory of the defense. But there's still guys that will be true sophomores.
Exactly. And they're so young.
and guys that have 170, 180 snaps. So there's still a lot of growing to do up there. And they need to be able to put more pressure on the quarterback without blitzing.
Yeah.
They had 3 sacks. A&M only gave up 7 sacks this year. 3 were in the Orange Bowl, but 2 of them were blitzes.
Mm-hmm.
So Grimes got them, and drawing a blank. Conley. So 2 of the 3 were blitzes. The other one was Tamon.
Yeah.
And Tamon just beat the lineman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was picture perfect. You're showing videotape to kids about how to beat the block, and how to essentially, I don't want to say bull rush, but how to beat the blocker and get to the quarterback. It would be that sack that Tamon had. But they've got to generate more of a pass rush from the front line,
mm-hmm.
because they gave up some big plays at times this year, and I think sometimes they had to bring too many guys. They had to show so much stuff. The more you could be really good conventionally, the better the defense is. And I think when they're better conventionally up front and get more of that pass rush, and they have to commit guys to a pass rush that you'd rather maybe have dropping back,
mm-hmm.
you're going to see more interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see more turnovers. You're going to see them get more stops. That other defender in the line of vision, for example, or someone else who covers, and not always having to put the corners on an island out there. They may get more third down stops as well. They got to get better up front.
Yeah,
and they just have to get better up front. They were very inconsistent. They weren't really that good up front in stretches this year. And I think they have the potential to be really good up front. They might not be really good on the first weekend of September, but by November, they have a chance to be really good. I think that if the defense progresses the way that the staff probably believes it will and should,
mm-hmm.
That the offense won't have to do that, and defense you get them more here kind of in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't like that. The offense was here and the D was down here this year.
Mm-hmm.
They did a little bit of that late, but it's got to be more like that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, completely agree. Last thing I want to talk about before we kind of wrap this one up, AJ, is there anybody on the defense you're kind of just looking forward to, or maybe interested in seeing how they develop next season? Because for me, the 3 guys that I'm kind of most interested and excited about to see what kind of steps they take in terms of this offseason is, I think Tony Grimes, the way he came on towards the end of the year, looked really good in that Texas A&M game in particular, made some really big plays for a guy, like it's been mentioned a million times this year, but I'm going to say it again, should still be a senior in high school. And then I think the other guys, I'm really interested to see what Gimmel can do now that Surratt's not beside him, now that Gimmel's kind of the quarterback out there, which he has been. But when he's going to kind of be one of the most experienced heads out there, if not the most experienced head out there, I'm really interested to see how he continues to develop. And I think another guy for me is Stormed Up, because he just missed so much time this year. But I think it kind of goes without saying, I don't think anybody would disagree with me, that before he got injured, he was the best, corner on this team, and still could be in a lot of ways based on what we've seen from him in his, year and 2 years here at the program. He's obviously only played about a year and a half, but overall, is there anybody that you're kind of excited or interested in seeing how they continue to develop going into next season, kind of see what strides they take in the offseason?
Well, since you gave 3 names, I'll give 3 names. And by the way, Storm, you could have argued he was the best player on defense.
I know, he was unbelievable, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it starts with Miles Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he showed a lot of potential and had some moments. He got in the backfield a few times and looked like he belonged back there. When I watched him play, especially second half of the season, I didn't look out there and say, "Oh, that's a true freshman."
Yeah.
So, and that's good. He looks the part.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting comment that Max said when we talked to him a couple of days after the Orange Bowl. He said, we looked at his team out there, they looked like they belonged up there. They looked like they were like they belonged. And that's true. And defensively, they did. They looked like it more when they started playing as kids. And that was what was so impressive about him. Conley didn't look like a freshman. Grimes didn't even look like a freshman. Max said he put on 20 pounds since he arrived. He was putting on weight during the season, which is kind of hard to do. So Miles Murphy would be number 1 for me, because they must be better. They must have some guy that can step forward to be really, really good up front. And if it's Murphy and Vahasik that they can really rely on there up front, I think that would be really, really good for this team. Asante in a full season, we all know how good Chaz was, but Asante, I think it's just really intriguing to see what he can do playing 65 snaps a game for 12 games.
Yeah.
He's a really smart kid. He has Jeremiah was just praising his preparation and his study habits and his discipline to the sport. So we'll get to see that play out over a 12-game season. And I'd be a fool if I didn't say Tony Grimes, because when I first started in this business, my first game I ever covered, Dre Bly picked off a pass in Charlottesville and ran it into the end zone and did some of his typical Dre Bly stuff as he was on his way to the end zone. And Tony Grimes might be the best corner they've had since him. Might be. He's not yet.
No.
Might be is down the road. He certainly has the skill set to be someone who could, be up for awards in a year or two and end up a high draft pick in the NFL. He's got all the specs. And so when you have an opportunity to cover a kid like that, you want to see all that stuff come out, because you don't get to see greatness very often at the college level. And I'm not saying he's definitely not great yet, and we don't know if he's going to be great, but the specs are there for him to be great. And that would be kind of fun to see become a reality. And if he is, and they get more of a traditional pass rush with the front line, just think about how good that defense can be. They could make a very sizable lead if those things happen. Those three guys right there, those three guys right there are really good next year, this defense will make a huge jump.
Yeah. So overall, kind of similar to the offense in terms of, a lot of reasons to be optimistic if you're a Carolina fans and excited about kind of the youth movement coming in. You also got a lot of really good recruits coming in that might come in and play some on the defensive side of the ball, especially. So pretty exciting times for if you're a Carolina football fan in terms of the defense.
Well, yeah. And I think, from the way I look at it, it's intriguing. I'm intrigued by what they can be.
That's a good word.
They're accumulating numbers now. You talk about depth. We talked in the offensive video about how, well, there's not much depth behind the offensive line, and getting Garrett Walston back kind of helps the tight end room. Even though they got bodies there, we don't really know what those kids can do. On defense, you've got guys, a collection of guys that are going to be in that room that have had games, really good games before, and they're bringing more in. It's going to be interesting to see if Ra Dilworth gets on the field right away. It's going to be interesting to see what Keyshawn Silver gives them, Jahvari Ritzie. These are really, really good players. These are kids that could have gone to the Alabamas and Clemsons and Ohio States of the world, but they're going to Carolina. So they played a lot of dudes early this past season. So and look how they made them better over time. So where is Ra on the 1st of August, and where is Ra in November? Yeah. And who might he supplant for playing time? To me, I'm really intrigued to see the way this defense takes shape. Absolutely no doubt about it. I think Carolina fans should be optimistic that the defense will be better and might be more athletic, so they might get more picks. This defense hadn't gotten a lot of interceptions since 2015 or whatever it was. That one year they had one, and it was against the Citadel, a team that almost never throws. So that's been an ugly trend on the defensive side of the ball. But I think with the athletes and the personalities of the athletes, the way they play, the higher end kind of guys, we should start to see more forced turnovers by this defense, in addition to the other stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, totally agree. A lot of youth still there. A lot of guys that have came on the end of last season and played really well. So, like you said, very intriguing from a journalistic standpoint in terms of covering this team. If you're a Carolina team,
no shortage of stuff. There's gonna be no shortage of stuff to write about.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, and if you're a Carolina fan, a lot of reason to be excited about not only what the offense is going to do, which we mentioned in the last video. Go watch that if you haven't. A lot of optimism in terms of what the defense can do as well, AJ. But let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, man. As always, thanks for joining me. If you haven't seen the first two videos we've done in this series, make sure you go check that out. But that's going to do it for part 3 of this series, where we focus on the defense. We'll have one more coming to wrap it up over the next few days, so stay tuned for that. But as always, guys, be sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Tar Heel Illustrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
All right, thanks.